Welcome to another episode of Permit Room Film Club, and we're gonna get into why some films become classics later. So, at the time of release, the film may not really make the kind of money that it was expected to, but over a period of time, it becomes a classic. Many examples like Shawshank Redemption, Fight Club, etc., etc., and they become classics later. Even E Nagaran Ki Emaindi became such a cult that on the re-release, it actually made more than what it collected in its entire run in just one day. So they become classics later. So we'll kind of have a quick exploration of that phenomena from my perspective. And I got to tell you, this is just my perspective. What actually makes a film bad or not very profitable at the time of its release is just such movies, especially it's just lost in translation, could be a bad release timing, especially in the local markets. That matters a lot, and it's just that wrong expectations set because of the previous film of the actor or the director, or just the trailer set some wrong expectations. Or sometimes a movie like Fight Club is very difficult to package because you can't just contain it as a genre piece. A rom-com, an action movie, a thriller, a horror, these are easier to package because you know what these genres are. But a movie like Fight Club, which dares to defy society and actually make a larger statement, and that's why it's a classic, it may not make money when it releases, but it is just perceived as a monetary dud at the time of release, and that goes out. Objectively, I refuse to like comment too much on what makes a film bad. I mean, there's many metrics to it. One is box office, one is credibility, and I'll discuss more about it. Did the audience change or did the film finally find its audience? In the case of such movies where release అయినప్పుడు అంత buzz రాదు but over a period of time becomes a classic, the audience change or did the film find its audience? I think it's a bit of both. Once the film finds its audience, there's word of mouth. The audience educates other audience about it. Like there are many movies like that. I'm not gonna like name a lot of them, but there are movies that release, and then I really love Month of Madhu, and I speak of it in a good light to others. So they change their perspective towards that movie, and then it's a chain reaction, and then there's a bit of a following, which sometimes is very evident on social media, but sometimes it's invisible too. So over a period of time, over decades, it can be rediscovered as a classic. Even Pyasa is an example. It stands the test of time. I think over 50 years have passed since its release, and it still is a staple in all film school discussions and all the greatest films ever discussions. Does time change the way we watch a film? I believe so, because we live in a society and the current culture affects how we perceive something that is projected to us. For instance, in a more conservative society, a movie might be a masterpiece, whereas in a more liberal society, people may not really look up to it. So there's a lot of things, but also I think it's just word of mouth. Film should find its audience on one platform or the other, and then it's word of mouth. Like Suleimani Kida, it had such a resurgence, and over these decades, I think it's been over 10 years, it still has special screenings, and it still is. Many of the people that featured in that film, they are featured in more profitable films, that but they still call it a great film. Even films like Rudravina, Chiranjeevi Garu's Rudravina, it had a resurgence at the time of release. I'm not sure if it made enough money, but over a period of time, Chiranjeevi Garu himself mentioned that it's in his top 10. So credible. Also, the thing with credibility is it has a longer shelf life than box office. So that's why these things have a resurgence and then adds a lot of credibility to the filmmaker. Um, can a film actually be ahead of its time? The whole concept of ahead of its time really comes because at that point the audience is not used to seeing such a movie. So One Nain Okkarni is an example where a lot of people say it was ahead of its time. And then another great Mahesh Babu Garu's film, which is Khaleja, and one of my favorite Mahesh Babu Garu's film is, people call it ahead of its time, but at that time I had a great time. And it's just reach word of mouth and not enough people being told. So I think people who love a film should be more vocal about it rather than critics and people who don't like a film are very vocal, but there might be 5 times more people who love it. But people who love it are usually not very vocal on social media. So that is one trend I found. But there are, of course, exceptions to the rule. Does failure sometimes help a film become a classic? In the longer run, if it finds an audience, it becomes a nice story, rags to riches story for the film. And it just helps the film get more wings because people relate to the underdog winning big in the longer run. So that's something people latch onto, and we are wired to always support the underdog unless it's India playing in the match. We always kind of like to see the underdog beat a giant. It's fun. Like there are examples of this in politics, in movies. It's just fun, and that's why there's such viewership for KBC, because it's a rags to riches story out in the public. um, how much does nostalgia influence what we call a classic? So when we look at a film from long back, when we look at it, it reminds us of the time and the political context of that time and era, and hence it finds a resurgence and it becomes a topic of conversation. And then people can, so there's a lot of political climate also affecting which film comes back into resurgence. So if there's an event that happens in the real world which closely reflects what happened in the film, that film might suddenly become very important, and everyone will say, "Oh, this director saw it back then 50 years ago," and that does happen. Can audiences create a better version of a film in their heads? This is very objective. What do you mean by better version? Some people just enjoy the film more, and some people, for their own personal preferences, enjoy it less. In fact, there's never been a time where people are more divisive about their opinion, and there's never been a bigger opportunity for independent filmmakers to make something that caters very specifically to a certain crowd. But I think the one missing piece is you got to market very loudly to the people that would buy your product, which is the movie. So I think a big marketing failure, a big marketing gap exists here, which is why films, really good films, especially in the lower budget spectrum, or classics that become great later and rise to the top of IMDb, these movies find a resurgence, mostly because it's a marketing error. We haven't marketed our product to all the people in the world, because it's 8 billion people. I am reasonably sure that enough people love your film. I mean, if you have taken all the care, done enough research. Also, the filmmaker at that point would have probably made his own vision as opposed to trying to please the audience. But even then, if he loves it, by logic, there are more people like him and they're all going to love it too. It's just the catchment area is not big enough. The other reason is the budget may have been a little over the top at that point. And Heaven's Gate is an example. Like, it found a lot of resurgence later and was even called a classic. But at the time of release, it apparently brought United Artists down, the whole production house. Um, can a film become a classic because it influenced films that came after it? Absolutely. I'll just speak of a film which nobody really knows, and excuse me for using the word, but there is a movie called Gandu on Netflix. It's by this filmmaker called Q. It's a Bengali movie, and I really love it. The aesthetic of it is very inventive, very new. It was shot on a 4D, 5D, whatever, and it's edited very specifically. It's the music is really cool to the point where Netflix actually picked it up. It, like, if you speak of Netflix configurations of FX3 being the minimum standard, it's definitely below that. Back then, digital camera was just finding its footing. So it's a black and white movie with very inventive aesthetics, and it's something that inspired me a lot. And a lot of people like this keep it alive through discussions. Another film is Om Darbadar, which really no one fully can assign meaning to that film, but I've seen it a couple of times too. And I find it charming. It is a difficult watch sometimes, but there's a lot of aesthetics from that influenced Dev D. And hence Om Darbadar again became a little more popular and had a re-release too at PVR. Lot of filmmakers speak of it as a big inspiration. So these things happen, especially with art house films. And who actually decides what becomes a classic? PR and marketing. But also, I don't think you can do too much of it. How many posters can you release calling it a classic? Unless it stands the test of time and it is relevant 10, 20 years after, you really don't know what becomes classic. So I think the best answer to that is time decides what becomes a classic. And can there even be such a thing as an objectively bad or poor film? Uh, yes, there can be. I believe, what does it do? Does has the director at least gone, or the filmmaker gone all the way with his or her vision? Then yeah, I think you at least win credibility. Lars von Trier did that. There's a lot of filmmakers who later won big credibility in the foreign film festivals and actually gone on to make a lot of money too. A lot of these guys, but there are a lot of people who just made films and they just get credibility as opposed to money. But credibility has a longer shelf life because at least the people who love you, they are satisfied and they'll come back. And which is why a filmmaker like Anurag Kashyap sir still finds funding, whereas a lot of great directors who scored industry hits earlier do not have funding right now, simply because they do not know how to operate at a lower cost. And it's they're just more caught up in telling a story and making it reach the masses. But there is the other side of making an art piece, which is what is your perspective, what is the director trying to say. And as long as you got that, as long as you are very viscous and uh, very particular about the vision you're putting forth, I think you're always going to get credibility, and that is going to give you more funding for more films. But I highly recommend you try to do more feedback and change the film to be more profitable and be more monetarily successful. Because I believe in capitalism and I believe films are so popular because they stand the chance to make the most money the fastest amongst all the art forms. You may say a painting sells for $100 million, but for whom? There's only hardly a, a handful of painters who manage that. Whereas filmmakers can, like, the market is so big, it's actually 8 billion people or whatever the population of the earth is. They can all watch a movie. It's very democratic and it's extremely enriching that film is a great leveling force. So while a film can become a classic later, I'm a big proponent of making it a box office hit right now. And that's my perspective on why films become classics later. Yeah.